Everybody, this isn't the most glamorous or exciting PowerPoint presentation. It's just to go over some of the main ideas of group problem solving for this week's module. And so group problem solving is really key to having successful interactions in education, and in special education you have to be able to work as a member of a team, which is going to be next week's topic. But we're starting with this idea of problem solving as a group. And group problem solving does require some important skills and just some background understanding of how to work together to solve a problem. And there's a few ways to look at problem solving, right? There's reactive problem solving, which is when a problem or crisis has occurred and now you have to react to that problem and come up with solutions. And then there's proactive problem solving, where you're kind of anticipating the problem and then planning for the solution before the problem has occurred. And so let's talk about problem solving and diversity. So we all come from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different life experiences, and that lens influences our engagement in problem solving. And we're going to actually talk about this in our discussion board this week. The next part is deciding if you need to solve the problem or not. So maybe you've addressed a problem. Hey, this is what's happening. What are we going to do about it? Are you going to solve it or no? Have you ever faced that before, maybe in your own life, where you've encountered a problem and you can either leave it or you can solve it? It really depends on what the goal is. So are the persons who have responsibility and resources for addressing the problem committed to resolving it? What might happen if nothing was done to resolve the problem? Are adequate time and resources available to resolve the problem? And does the problem merit the effort and resources required to make significant change? So let's talk about the two in the middle there. What might happen if nothing is changed or resolved? And is there adequate time and resources available? So this is really key, right? Have you ever been tasked with solving a problem that you don't have enough information about? Maybe you don't have the time and resources to solve the problem, and it feels like you're beating your head against a wall. Like, okay, I've been tasked with this assignment, I've been tasked with doing this work to solve a problem, but I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't have anybody to help me. I don't have the resources needed, and it can be very frustrating. And so before you even start the process of coming to a solution, you kind of have to ask yourself, what's going to happen if I don't solve this problem? And do I have everything I need to solve the problem? And if the answer, what happens if I don't do anything about this problem? If the answer to that is nothing, okay. If the answer is things are going to get worse, then you probably need to move to part 2 and say, do I have everything I need? And if you don't have everything you need, do you know who you ask to get what you need? So let's look at this. This is a table that identifies problem solving as it relates to response to intervention. And you can just see, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you because I think that would be redundant, but you can just see the problem solving element, RTI, and then the general group problem solving. And so let's take a look at the element of the problem target. So it's the student, right? And then the group that will be solving the problem for the student are the student, the program, the practices, the professionals, and are there other areas of concern? And so as you think about RTI in response to intervention, and I know that you've also been talking about MTSS, multiple tiered systems of support in your other courses. If not, you will. But that's all problem solving processes. RTI and MTSS are just other ways to look at group problem solving. So here are the steps in group problem solving. This is what you really have to pay attention to in this module. First, you have to identify the problem, and does everyone in the team agree that that is the problem? Have you ever been working on a project or something and you get halfway through whatever you're doing and you realize that half the group has a completely different idea of what the problem is than you do? and then you start from square one, right? So identify and acknowledge that the problem is the same across the board. Everybody has the same idea of what the problem is. Generate potential solutions. This is where it can get very tricky. Egos get in the way, and there's always a power dynamic in the room or in any group, right? And that could be from the extroverts and the introverts having a power clash, right? So maybe the extroverts are very boisterous and outspoken, but the introverts still have ideas and get frustrated that their extroverted peers are kind of taking all of the time. This also happens when there's leveled or varied roles in the group, right? Maybe the principal's there, maybe the school psychologist is there, maybe the paraeducator is there, and who feels like they have the authority to speak up in the group, right? So when you're thinking about generating potential solutions, the floor, everyone has to be on equal footing and equal ground. Otherwise, some people who maybe have really great ideas won't speak up because they're afraid to. They're feeling like their ideas won't be valued. And so you have to make it a very clear part of your ground rules when you're problem solving that everyone's voice should be heard. Every idea is important. There are no stupid ideas. And that has to just hold true throughout the process. If you're going to generate potential solutions, you got to put everything down, from the lofty ideas to the smallest ideas. Everything is important. And then you have to evaluate your potential solutions. So maybe, let me see, I'll use an example in my real life. This is really dumb, but I don't care. It's just an example. My teenager is not doing well in school at all. And I overheard her speaking with one of her teachers this week, and he said that he wanted her to do this assignment. And it's a project. And I asked her, do you have everything you need? And I heard her say yes. And he said, I want you to do this over the weekend. And so I thought, okay, I've been working really hard at not trying to step on her toes or hold her hand to do her work, right? So my problem was, she's not going to do it if I don't remind her. The potential solutions are, I can just remind her. I can ask her to give me all of the ideas she has to complete the assignment. I can list out the assignment expectations for her and hold her hand through the process. I can let her eat dirt, right? Just be like, fine, you knew what you need to do, you didn't do it. So then I have to evaluate all of those. Which one is going to be the most beneficial for her and the most realistic for me? And then I had to select the solution, right? So all I did was remind her and then asked her a few clarifying questions to get her started on the assignment. And then you implement it, and then you evaluate the outcome. So after she's done, I will say she got all of the materials ready. It's just sitting. She's done nothing else. If it's not done by morning, I'll have to evaluate the outcome of how I helped her solve this problem, right? And so then you evaluate the outcome. I know that was kind of an odd example, but that was my process today. And then characteristics of a well-defined problem. So an identifiable discrepancy. Oh my goodness. This is what happens when you don't get to speak to a lot of people in one day. You start to lose your words. An identifiable discrepancy, just read it. Just read that bullet yourself. Exists between the current and desired situations. Participants share the perception that the problem exists, right? Remember we said everybody has to agree that this is the problem you're working on. Participants agree on the factors that indicate the discrepancy. Okay, do we all agree what caused the problem? And then the problem statement suggests many kinds of solutions. I get in trouble in grad school because I tend to put the solution in my problem statement. You can't use your problem statement to solve your problem. That's not what the point of problem solving is. The point of problem solving is to put the problem down on paper, right? And then to collect all the right people and come up with as many solutions as possible. So here are some suggestions for identifying the problem. Think of your problem identification as having both elements. Describe the problem precisely, confirm problems with multiple sources of information, allow adequate time for problem identification, and then monitor the problem-solving context, right? Do I have the right people, time, and materials? And then generating potential solutions. So brainstorming. I mean, we've practiced brainstorming in school all our lives. And whether or not our practice was sufficient or adequate, I don't know. But we have all practiced brainstorming our whole lives. You brainstorm when you make a shopping list, right? You brainstorm when you're working on a project for school. Like, so just brainstorm. The rules typically given for brainstorming during group problem solving include accepting all ideas that are offered without evaluating them. If you get caught in the moment and catch yourself saying, well, that's a crappy idea, keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself. There is a time to decide which ideas are going to be appropriate and which are not. And it's really easy for us to say, well, that's a terrible idea. But just remember, all ideas matter because that idea could generate a new idea. Propose solutions freely, even if they seem impractical. This is where a lot of people get hung up. This is where children, I believe, think better and more critically than adults do, because adults are limited by what they think they can and cannot do, where children will problem solve and come up with ideas that we never think about, mainly because we don't think that is a possibility. Have someone write down the ideas being generated and then play with the ideas to generate more ideas. And then brainwriting. This is when open discussion of ideas may not be fruitful, right? And so maybe instead of everybody shouting out their ideas, everybody takes a minute to write down on paper their ideas. And this can eliminate some of the barrier to participation for folks who maybe feel less empowered to speak up during group discussions. This is me all the time. I always am afraid that I'm going to say something stupid. And I also get very overwhelmed when extroverts are in the room with me. So this is always a good option for me where I can write my ideas down. And then maybe all of the ideas go into a bucket and they all get read aloud by someone. And that does eliminate some barriers to participation in the problem-solving process. And you could use this when the group is too large. And sometimes when a group is large, the extroverts are going to take over. And extroverts, if you feel like I'm picking on you, it's because I'm an introvert. And it's easier for me to see the flaws in my inability to participate with extroverts than otherwise. And then nominal group techniques. This is where every person generates ideas individually in a small group. So maybe you have a large group and you break up into a smaller group to generate ideas. And this is combining both aspects of brainstorming and brainwriting. And it's often used to ensure equal opportunity for participation. It's a long history of successful application. Every person gets to generate ideas individually and in a small group. And solutions then get to be prioritized and ranked. And the top will be what's shared to the larger group. And then evaluating potential solutions. You can do this in a variety of ways. I like the idea of using plus and minus or positive effect and negative result kind of discussion. And then you can also outline the task for the potential solutions. And so delineate the positives and negatives for each potential solution, and then outline the task. This is where you get to the action part of the problem solving. Consider the tasks associated with each of the possible solutions to decide whether each option still seems feasible. Makes sense. And then consider the solution. Is it intrusive? Is it feasible? Is their individual preference? The decision should be made carefully with a balance between caution and reliance on the collective, careful judgment of the group. And then implement. Finalize the plan, detail the arrangements, devise a criteria for success, schedule time for evaluation, and carry out the solution. And then evaluate your outcome. Determine whether the established goal has been reached. Determine whether those involved in the problem process are satisfied with the impact, and plan different courses of action, depending on what you learned during the problem-solving steps. And here just summarizes the main ideas. I want you to really focus, though, on the problem-solving steps. Identify the problem, generate solutions, evaluate potential solutions, select solution, finalize. We made it. We made it just in time. Have a great week, everyone.